Southeastern Bow Hunter Podcast.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Southeastern Bow Hunter Podcast. Dude, this episode is going to be a really good one. We got another local guy who a lot of the people who listen probably know. And hopefully I don't butcher his last name because it should be easy to say, but I've got a monkey brain, so that's your boy struggles even with my last name. But we got Mr. David Alligood or Alligood, however it's supposed to be said. I'm gonna ask him on this episode, so we'll all know finally. But David is a local dude who is, first off, a very accomplished archer. I think he, we're going to talk about it. I know he won some sort of championship recently or some big shoot. I was up at Ace today, getting my bow back. As you can see, it's back there, and helping Josh get his new lift. He just got a lift 33 and got all the bells and whistles. And yeah, man, Josh is set up right now for bow season. But with this episode with David, man, David's obviously a very accomplished archer, has been in the industry for probably longer than I've been alive. So, and he also is a very accomplished bow hunter. So this episode is going to be a really good one. I just need to clear something up to all the people who, have been reaching out about some of the, more controversial things we've talked about on this podcast. Look, all I'm going to say is that I do not condone poaching. I don't at all. Like, I don't agree with anybody that goes out and shoots deer illegally. So that's all I'm going to say. This podcast does not condone that. I don't condone it. If somebody did it in the past and then they stopped and went legit, I don't judge them for their past, right? Like, I just don't. We all have a past. We've all done things that we regret. And so I just had to clear that up. So for all the haters out there, thank you. But look, that's not what this podcast is about. Just had to clear that up. Before we get started with David, we got to get the partners out of the way. I'm going to say it really quick this week. Obsession Bows, my HB33, just got it back, shot it today, brand new strings and cables. It's ready. All I got to do is get my sight tape in, and which, if you can't tell, which you probably can't in the video, but dialed archery. I'm shooting the Arxos, best sight I've ever used, honestly. It does take a little bit of time to get it, set up and dialed in, but once it is, dude, it is perfect. So just, they've got videos and stuff for that. They've got manuals, whatever you need to do. There's a whole sheet that'll tell you how to sight it in. It's honestly, it's probably less complicated than I made it, but I like to not read instructions. So, but yeah, man, Obsession Bows, dialed archery, Scout Tech. My Scout Tech cameras have been doing amazing lately. There's a lot of work to do with those still this off season. Summit tree stands, if you're in the market for a new stand, use our code SEBH15 on their website that covers everything, and you get 15% off. ASIO gear, my camo choice. I love that company. I love the people there. And if you're kind of running a little behind, or maybe you're in the market for a new camo, check them out. Go to ASIOgear.com and look at everything they've got. At checkout, use our promo code SEBH. That'll save you 15% as well. Let's see, VPA, broadhead that I will probably forever use. They do have a new Omega bleeder coming out eventually probably tail end of summer. So I will be shooting that. Right now I'm shooting the S7 and the Omega, both left bevel. And dude, I love those guys. They let us come out the TAC. They've hooked us up and helped us out, promoting a little bit. And they're just a great company. So go to their website, check out everything they've got. Use the promo code SEBH10, and that saves you 10% site-wide. That's broadheads all the way to apparel, all the way to probably the armory as well. Man, who else do we got? Gosh, dude. Bergie Bowsmith, awesome bow tech. Really, 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 really knowledgeable guy. One of my go-to dudes. I probably have like 4 of them, but Bergie always, it tells you like it is, right? So go check him out, Bergie Bowsmith, on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Ace Hardware, Ace Archery and Social Circle. like I said, me and Josh were up there for a few hours today. I got my bow back. They tuned it for me. Everything is good. And dude, great people up there. Big John, Mark, thank you guys. Dude, I think that's pretty much everybody. If I forgot someone this week, I'm sorry. I'm kind of rushing through this one. My wife just got a new Jeep and we had to eat and then I had to run down here. So, but there's always time for our Lord and Savior. Look, if you don't know Jesus Christ, man, I really, 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 really am pushing for people to get to know him and at least give him a chance. There is nothing better than having a relationship with him. He just read your Bible. Really, if you need to know how to start it, I like to start with the New Testament, read that all the way through, and then start at the Old Testament. It's whatever you want to do, whatever God puts on your heart to do. With that, I would highly encourage you to at least open your Bible. If you don't have one, go get one. Just give it a chance. I'm not forcing it on you, but it changes your life, man. It really does. So yeah, getting that out of the way, that's pretty much everybody, I think. Like I said, for anyone who I forgot, I'm sorry. Reach out to me, chew me out, cuss me out, whatever you want to do. This is going to be a really good episode. So you know what? Enough rambling. Covered everybody. Talked about our Lord. Dude, let's do it. Let's get into it with David Alligood. Another local legend on this week. Yeah, see, that's not even the thing I was telling you about. But truly, I met you at TAC. And we literally talked for 2 hours while there was a monsoon and talked about literally everything for under the sun, hunting, not hunting, all that stuff. You gave me a lot of info on arrows, on some hunting stories you've got, which I hope we can cover in this episode. But there's one thing that I should have asked you and I didn't, and now I'm happy I didn't because I can save it for this episode. Okay. Is it David Alligood or Alligood? Because I should know.
I answer to anything as long as you don't call me late for supper.
Got it. Okay.
Cool. In general, it's Alligood.
Alligood. Okay. Got it. I'll remember that. I will remember that. Sorry.
No problem, man. No
problem. Dude, you'd think with a last name like mine, right, that I'd be able to do that. But yeah. No, I don't. It's my monkey brain doesn't work right. But anyway, man, look, thank you for coming on the podcast. First
Absolutely.
off,
I'm proud
we finally did
privilege.
it. When I say local legend, I don't say that lightly. I really don't.
Well, very flattering, but I appreciate that.
Well, I've seen some of the deer you've killed, and you won. All right. So we just talked about this, and you were telling me the whole story, and I was like, David, can we save the story for the podcast because these guys got to hear it. So for those who don't know, you obviously kill big deer. We'll get into that. You do. Don't be. You're being very humble right now, but you do. You definitely do. At least the ones you've shown me. So to me, nothing. But you also won a very, in my opinion, prestigious archery tournament. Your first time out shooting 3D. So you told me the story, but for the people who don't know, what is the story on that? How did that happen?
Well, 2007, I went to Covington to an archery shop and bought a new bow. And while I was there, one of the guys said, "Why don't you come shoot some 3D with us?" And I'm like, "What's that?" I didn't know what he was talking about. And he said, "Well, you go out in the woods and you shoot 20 targets at various ranges and you shoot for score." I'm like, "That sounds like fun." So 2007, I shot a few local events, and I don't know that I won. I can't remember that far back local stuff. I may have, shot a good enough to win a local shoot, but it was just fun for me. And then in 2008, after 2007 went by, I noticed all these guys with these fancy, shiny colored target bows, and I'm shooting a hunting bow. And I've shot PSE equipment for over 40 years. And I found a used PSE Shark X, and some of these guys will know what that is. It was a 2006 or 7 model bow. I bought it in 2008, bright burnt orange. Set it up, and I shot novice because that's all I was familiar with. I didn't know anything about open setups or scopes and lenses and movable sight. I didn't know anything about target archery. I just knew I was shooting at animals, foam animals, trying to shoot the best score I could.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that bow was as slow as Christmas with a 7-inch brace height, but it was as accurate a bow as any bow I've ever shot. Went to Augusta in 2008, the third or fourth tournament of the year. I got to the venue 15 minutes before I was supposed to shoot. I got there. When I registered Miss Lorraine at the trailer, the first thing out of her mouth was, "You cannot shoot in that shirt. The plain collar shirt is a t-shirt." I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "You have to have a collared shirt or the quarter zip shooter style shirt." I'm like, "Oh, great."
Mm.
So I had to drop $50 at the little stand where the man had all the shirts with the brands on it. So I bought me a PSE shirt. And first, we shot at 8 o'clock. I had no warm up. Went straight to the range. I shot 12 up that morning. I was very pleased with that. And I mean, it was novice. It's 30 yards max, and all the yardage is known. But you still have to make the shot.
Mm-hmm.
I shot 12 up, and the buddy that I went with shot 20 up. And I'm like, "Wow, man, I said, "You on fire. You mean business." And he said, "Well, David, it's either go big or go home." And in 2008, you could still shoot 14s in live competition. It wasn't reserved just for the shoot down in the pro divisions. So I went back out that afternoon and took his advice, and I shot at 7 14s, and I hit them all, and ended up shooting 32 up for the weekend, and I won by 2 points. And I thought it was really cool because this 48-year-old guy beat all these 20-something-year-olds, and you know, and after that, though, the honest truth, and a lot of the guys that may listen to this, some of the old John will remember, 2 weeks later, after that, I developed such a bad case of target panic that I was blanking 2 targets around. I thought I had it figured out, and shooting at 14s was the thing to do if it was in 20 yards or less. And I just snatched up it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And I have the best I've done since then was a top 10 finish. And then I got a rotator cuff tear about 4 years ago, so I had to lay off for a while. And it's finally, I shot 1 tournament this year, 1 last year. And the tournament I shot this year, I shot 13 down the first day, 14 down the second day, and I was not unhappy at all.
Yeah.
I didn't miss a target, and I know I'm not competitive enough right now because I don't practice anymore. But my shoulder's better, so I'll be in Coleman. I'll go to the Classic mainly because it's in my territory.
Yeah.
And I'll have fun whether I shoot. If I don't even shoot even score, I'll still have fun. That's the main thing right now. I like having fun. I like seeing my people. I see a lot of customers. I see a lot of my dealers. And that tournament in Augusta in 2008, I was introduced to a man, Mr. Jim Landrum, who retired from PSE in 2016, and I was offered his job in 2016. 3 years later, I was forced to make a change, and I work for a rep group agency now out of Ohio. It's been 5 years and completely satisfied.
So,
wonderful place to be.
Can we say? I'm just gonna say it.
Say it.
I'm gonna say it. Victory Archery, which is, obviously, like, the podcast works with Nimrod, right?
Right.
And I love their arrows, great company. But before I was shooting that, I was shooting Nimrod or Victory.
Right.
And so what's crazy is, like, you and I were friends on Facebook for a while.
Right.
And I had no idea. Like, I knew you hunted, right? But there's so many people on there that hunt that it's kind of like, oh, okay, cool. He kills big deer every year. It's awesome. But when it's tack, you're not really thinking of that,
Right.
And so then I saw you post on Facebook you were going to be working the Victory booth at TAC, and I was like, oh, well, dude, I got to stop in there because VPA brought us out there to go work the booth and shoot for them and all that. And so me and Josh went out there, and that actually is where we first met, which was honestly crazy. We've been friends on Facebook for, I feel like, at least probably 2 or 3 years.
3 years, right? Correct. Yeah. Right.
So, yeah, man. I mean, how is that working with Victory? Like, everyone that knows me knows that, to me, the best arrow out of Victory is the Rip TKO. I'm a little biased on that just because I really like how the carbon weave looks. But I also shot some last season, and they performed flawlessly. So, like, how did you get into that? Really?
When I was like I said, when I was forced out of my PSE job, 3 days later, God provided me a job with a great company. I mean, honestly did. It was just a God thing all the way through. I was only unemployed for 4 days.
Mm.
And the rep group that I'm associated with is Gartland and Associates. The office is based in Ohio. And we have a multitude of lines, Victory being one of my biggest and best lines. I have 3 lines that are my top money makers for me, and then a myriad of I don't want to say smaller ticket items, but items that I don't sell as much of. I mean, Nose Jammer is a great line for me. The Extinguisher Grunt Calls is a great line for me. SKB Cases, Habit, the clothing line out of Arkansas.
Yep.
And Victory, Habit, and SKB are my 3 largest.
Really?
3 best lines. Yes. Mm-hmm.
See, I would think Nose Jammer would be one of them because I used to use that a couple years ago.
Nose Jammer is one of my better lines, but the volume for Victory and SKB and Habit is just so much more.
Good point.
Right. Realtree out of Columbus is probably my biggest customer strictly because of the Habit clothing line.
Wow. Wait. Okay, hold on.
I'm good friends with the Realtree people. Not necessarily Bill, and Tyler. I see them quite often, but
yeah,
I mainly deal with the e-commerce side of the Realtree office because they put all my clothing on their web store.
Really? So Habit is what's Habit? I thought I knew, but apparently I don't.
Well, Habit is Mako Outdoors, and Habit is the name brand for Mako Outdoors. They're based out of Bentonville, Arkansas. Okay. What else is in Bentonville, Arkansas? Come on.
Alligators.
Home office of Walmart.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Quick funny story on that one. The owner of Habit, Mako Outdoors, is Mr. Dick Mahan. Back in the 80s or 70s, he was quail hunting in Arkansas and got on the wrong side of the fence. Well, inevitably, the owner of the wrong side of the fence walked up on him while he was quail hunting. And, they had a little conversation about what was going on. Well, the guy he was across the fence was Mr. Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart.
Wow, really?
So yeah, and so they got to be good friends.
Yeah.
And he hired Mr. Mahan to develop the outdoor department at Walmart. And then after many years of Walmart, he retired, but he felt like he wasn't done. So he founded Habit and Mako Outdoors. And the clothing line is fantastic. It's not expensive.
Yeah.
It's the same quality as some of the higher brands, I'm not gonna mention pricing or anything like that. That's not what we're here for. But it is less expensive, the same quality, in some cases better. They make a full line of apparel, a camo apparel for men, women, and children. And their fishing apparel, I think, is second to none. I mean, the button-up, vented back colored fishing shirts in the rainbow colors. And then the pullovers, polyspan performance shirts. That's one of my better line, probably my best line. Play my bigger line strictly off of 2 customers. I have a lot of independents, but I have a big distributor in Alabama, and then I have Realtree in Columbus.
That's crazy.
Yes, it's a really good job. It really is.
Yeah, sounds like you got a few connections.
Yeah, well,
that's wild, dude. But back to the Victory thing, so you got into that. I mean, I'm assuming you only shoot Victory arrows.
I shot Easton forever and ever. When I took this job, I will not promote something that I do not use myself.
Yep.
And the first arrows they sent me from Victory were, just like you said, RIP TKOs. Victory is known for their manufacturing process, their spine alignment on the arrows, and the last 2 seasons ago, they came out with the VAP SS.
Mm-hmm.
They had the TKO line. And for those guys that may not know, if you shoot Victory arrows, they have a TKO line and then a standard line. You can buy a VAP TKO or RIP TKO. Yep. I mean, VAP TKO or a standard VAP, RIP TKO, standard RIP. The TKO is a shop designation. They don't sell those to boxes, to big box stores. They don't sell them to it's mainly a pro shop designation. If it has a TKO on it, you'll find it in a pro shop, not a big box store.
So they don't sell those at
and then they
Bass Pro or anything.
Say that again.
So they don't sell those at Bass
what was
Pro
the
or
question?
anything?
No, not the TKO line. They do sell the standard arrows at a big box store, but Bass Pro, Cabela's, any of those cannot buy, not supposed to buy
Yeah.
the TKO series. It's basically the same arrow. The weave look on the TKO is a better looking arrow.
Oh yeah.
Because of the weave in the carbon, the labeling, it's a better looking arrow. They're basically the same arrow except for the weave design and the labeling.
Yeah.
But the TKO, to me, is just a better looking arrow. There's a few grains weight difference per spine, not much, not enough to make a difference, but there is a little bit of weight difference per grain per inch. 2 seasons ago, they introduced the VAP SS as a stainless steel mesh woven into the carbon.
Mm-hmm.
And then last year, 2023, they introduced the RIP SS. And that's what I currently shoot. It's a bad arrow. It really is. I killed 4 animals last year. 5 animals, I forgot.
A lot.
With the same shaft and the same lighted knock. That Halo knock. Halo's one of my lines. But I shot 4 animals with the same arrow and the same lighted knock. And the only reason I didn't shoot any other animals with the same arrow and the same lighted knock is the last deer I shot was a big old buck. He wasn't a massive rack buck, about 120, 121 inches, but he was just a big old man. I mean, and he fell on it and he broke it. And, nobody's arrow is going to stand up to a 220-pound buck falling on your arrow.
That's wild, dude. It's so interesting to me how they're able to do stuff like that. Cause like, working with, Q at Nimrod and all of that and talking with other people in the industry, I've learned kind of the ins and outs of arrow building. But what is really interesting to me is how they're able to do, like you were saying, the VAP SS, the RIP SS. It's I'm not smart enough to understand that.
Me either. Easton makes an arrow that's very popular, Full Metal Jacket. It is a bad arrow in itself, and it is a great arrow. Easton makes good products, but the only drawback is the Full Metal Jacket will bend because it's an aluminum with it's fiber with I don't know which one it is. It's either carbon.
I think it's carbon inside, aluminum
outside. It's a carbon aluminum mix.
Yeah.
It will bend, but my arrows will break. It'll take a 200-something pound buck falling on it and make it break. But that's the Full Metal Jacket's a great arrow. I just prefer that stainless steel mesh.
Yeah.
Because it may break, but it's not going to bend.
Yeah. Well, I've had instances I've talked about on the podcast before, and I told you about it my last season experience with I'm just going to say another arrow brand that will not be named because I don't want to bash anybody, right?
No, I don't bash anybody. I don't bash anybody.
Yeah, that's one thing I won't do is outwardly bash someone. I might talk about a product and just not, I'll give my opinion, but I won't say who it is because it's just my opinion. What's my opinion worth? Nothing. So, but I will say I've had instances where I've shot certain arrows, multiple different brands, and they've either broken in foam or broken in an animal. I've had that happen. I had that happen last season where I had that specific arrow dead shot, dude. I mean, I showed you the picture. You saw the doe that I hit. She should have been dead, but because the arrow broke, didn't happen. So yeah, I mean, arrows break, but when you've got some that are made, the way that I feel like the SS lineup is, or even if you run one that's just got the little like a half out and a sleeve, that protects it so much. So that kind of leads me into one thing I did want to ask you. We talked about it at TAC, but I kind of want to refresh my memory on it. A rumor that or not a rumor, but something I've always been told, from people in the industry or videos I've watched or whatever, comments, whatever it's going to be, right, is Victory makes great arrows, but people always complain about the components. Now, when I asked you about this attack, I know that you kind of set the record straight on that. So I kind of want to ask you, like, what is it with the components now that they've sort of changed? Or is it sort of just kind of like people talking bad because people talk bad?
Well,
Sorry.
Bless you.
Thank you.
Anything that's manufactured sooner or later you might find a weak spot. It's bound to happen. You know, people say mechanical broadheads are not, or fixed heads are better than mechanical. You know, because if it's mechanical, something can go wrong. I don't know that I agree with that, but that's just, again, that's their opinion. It's my opinion.
Yeah.
The shock insert, SHOK, the shock insert that Victory makes now is, I thought I might have some in my desk right here, but I don't. It's I think I tried to explain it to you. That shock insert goes over the outside of the shaft, very similar to a collar.
Mm-hmm.
And you got almost an inch of that outsert over the end of the arrow shaft to protect that. You also have part of the insert down inside the shaft, okay? And then you got the actual outsert at the top where you screw your broadhead or your field point in.
Mm-hmm.
And they did make some inserts in the past that were a different design that had no protection for the end of the shaft. They still make some of those in stainless steel, and a lot of guys really like them when they're looking for a stainless steel insert. But that shock insert is a 2-piece swedged insert, stainless steel aluminum. And even though it's 2 pieces, you're not going to pull it apart. And the way that outsert slides over the shaft almost an inch gives you the same protection and same result as using a collar. And for me, I had one of my customers complain, and I think it's because he was using older components.
Mm-hmm.
He loves building Victory arrows, but he will not put Victory components on the end because he said every time I spin it, not every time, he said 1 out of 12 inevitably be crooked. And I'm like, well, either you're putting it in there wrong or your spinner's wrong, because I've used Victory arrows now for 5 years, and I've never, out of all that, because I build all my own arrows, all my hunting arrows, all my target arrows, I've never had a component that would not spin straight, ever, in 5 years of using the product. So that's all I know.
Well, I do got to say I like the design of the shock insert because what's funny is I knew what you were going to say when I asked you that. But I wanted to get it out of you because, you know, and that design honestly makes sense. Like it's almost to me, it's a more simplistic version than being like, all right, let me get a regular half out. Then let me slide this on. When I take the broadhead off, oh, the sleeve's going to fall. Where'd the sleeve go? You know what I'm saying? Like it stays right there. So yeah, look, man, you know that I'm a big fan. I'm a huge fan of Victory. You know, my boys at Working Class Bow Hunter use them. They've been shooting them for years, man.
Yep.
And Kurt is the reason why I even shot Victory arrows in the first place. And you know, I wanted to touch on that a little bit just because, you know, we talked about it for 2 hours.
Sure.
Tack. So
Right.
I kind of wanted people to get that info. But I guess moving on from that, dude, so you showed me some deer that you've killed in the past, and you told me a lot of stories. My monkey brain is terrible. So if you could refresh my memory a little bit, what would you say? I guess we'll start it off with what would you say would be, what's the best story from last season?
This past season?
Yes.
We recently built a house, and I only own 4 acres. Okay. But you know, the old saying about real estate is location, location, location. My 4 acres is surrounded by, on either side of me, bigger lots. There's 12 acres on one side, 10 on the other, 10 past that, 8 past that. Across the street from me is about 65 to 70 acres. That's all wooded and mostly floodplain, so I won't have to worry about anybody building over there.
Mm-hmm.
Behind me, where the 12 acres and the 10 acres come together, behind that there's 100, behind that there's 500. And I have a huge flowing creek down the side of my property. My property is only like 300 feet wide and 600 and something feet deep.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like a big rectangle. But like, again, my location is just
perfect.
That's all I'll say about that, because a lot of these guys know where I live. I don't want them over here messing with me.
Yeah.
But last season was my first full season here, and I fed them well. I food plotted them a little bit, ran my cameras all year. And I had several decent young bucks on camera, 3.5-year-olds, 2.5-year-olds, but only one animal that really caught my attention. The one I ended up shooting him, but he was nocturnal for months until one Sunday in October. I don't know, 10:30 in the morning. 10, I think I still got the picture. 10:30 in the morning, I'm at church and my phone buzzes, and me thinking it might be one of my kids, it needs something. I look and it's freaking camera going off. And that deer is, where's he at? He's on the wall. So, but anyway, he's walking up from my stand towards my house. And this stand is only located 80 yards from back of my house, you know? And so he's there at 10:30 in the morning. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, it's end of October. It's time for him to start cruising anyway. So I hunt that afternoon in my stand. I can see a single deer. And I have another spot. It's about 2 miles away. And while I was in my stand behind my house, 2 miles away, these two nice bucks show up on the edge of a field, checking for does, cruising around. So Monday afternoon, I go over there, and what happens? At 5 o'clock, this buck shows up behind my house in front of my stand. And I didn't see anything over at the other place.
Kills me how they do that.
Yeah, that's just hunting. Tuesday morning, I went back there behind the house, didn't see a deer. Tuesday afternoon, I said, well, I'm going to take a chance. I went back there Tuesday afternoon. I got in the stand at 4 o'clock. I shot him at 20 minutes after 4.
Oof.
He walked across the creek with a little 3-pointer. The 3-pointer was a regular visitor day and night for months and months and months. And
yeah.
They came across the creek, got to the feed, and the little 3-pointer kept staying. You know, he kept turning his head, looking back across the creek, and I'm thinking, oh, please be him. And that deer walked across the creek. And Eric, I've been doing this. I shot my first deer in 1979. I'll flip the computer up in a minute and show you a picture of them. But when it got time for me to draw on that animal, this has never happened to me before, ever. And I thought it was ridiculous, but I couldn't pull my bow back.
Oh no!
Adrenaline, because the only thing I can figure is it was a deer I had targeted that I wanted to shoot. It was on my property, and it just took me by surprise, and I couldn't draw my bow back. And 60 pounds is all I shoot. You know, I'm just shaking all over trying to pull it. Well, I said, okay, calm down, take a breath. And he's busy looking at the 3-pointer. He's not paying any attention to me. The wind's good. And I waited about 30 seconds, and he turned his head away again to look at the little buck, and it drew like butter. It was nothing. I just slid it back, put it on him. I shot him, and he went maybe 20, 22, 23 yards. Fell over.
Man.
Here's a good deer. I have him in here somewhere. I just did a Euro mount on him. He's not a huge deer. He's only got 11.5-inch spread. What? But his beam's almost touching the middle.
Yeah, I mean, that's a cool deer.
He had good mass, and you know, he was just a big old deer. I think he was on the decline, because I have pictures of him, you know, full body, and he was just a big old deer. And the funny thing is, after I shot him, within a week, I had 9 more cruising through this little 4 acres.
Holy crap, dude.
9 more.
So would you say it's kind of like a transition area for you guys over there?
No, but it is a huge travel zone.
Okay.
That creek corridor has for years. People told me, a lot of my friends told me when I bought this piece of property, they told me that they've seen deer crossing the road, and this particular spot has been known for good deer for years and years and years.
Yeah.
But that creek corridor, Hard Labor Creek is what runs by my house, and Hard Labor Creek runs down and feeds the new reservoir in Social Circle. So it is a big flowing year-round creek. Looks like and in certain places it looks like a mountain stream. Big rocks, you know, beautiful little stream.
Sounds like you need to drop me a pin, you know, to help with the doe problem you guys seem to have. Not the bucks.
You know what? I'm
kidding. I'm just kidding.
I actually see it's about 50-50.
Really?
Does what I see. I see a lot of does, but I see a lot of bucks moving through here, especially during cruising time, you know, November.
Yeah.
Right after I bought the property, we hadn't even moved here yet, because we owned it for 3 years before we built the house. And my neighbor beside me texted me one morning. He said, he said, somebody just run over a big old buck right in front of your driveway. I'm like, don't tell me that. And now I had cameras out. I was actually hunting off of it some, but not as much as I do now. But I found out who the guy was, and he had a picture of the deer, and he framed it 8x10 and put it on his desk. It said, because he hit him with a brand new Chevy truck.
Oh man.
He he put a caption on the picture, said, "This is a $15,000 deer." Well, it was an old 10 pointer. I'm 4.5, 5.5 years old at minimum. Really good mass, about an 18-inch spread. Not very much for time length, but just a big old massive deer. And that particular deer, I had 0 pictures, 0 encounters. So he was looking. He was actually running looking, and he just happened to cross the road at the wrong time.
That sucks, man. To get a brand new truck and just
somebody,
smack a deer. That's terrible. Dude, so all right, see, I had a few other things I wanted to ask you, but you got my brain turning now. So when you're looking at like obviously we're in June now. So when this episode drops, it'll be the second week of June. These bucks are starting to grow. I've got one that's already outside the ears. And I think I've asked a few people. Some people say it's the one I was after, that I've been after the past couple of years. Some people say it's not. I don't know. All I know is it's a big deer, right? But what I'm struggling with is this property is on fire the first month of season, right? Because you can kind of pattern them. They're not really running around much. I do know that October 25th, this property is like, there's bucks daylighting everywhere, right? Wherever I've got a camera, there's a buck moving there. But what's your early season strategy? Like, what are you looking at right now to get on these deer and be able to shoot them, within, let's say within the first month and a half? Are you feeding them? Are you trying to pattern them? Or are you kind of just laying out, or basically staying out of there, laying low and then going in?
Believe it or not, I do feed, whether it be corn or protein or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I haven't even started yet this year.
Oh, wow.
In the past, I will start in another month.
Yeah.
Into June, middle and 1st of July. And it's very funny you mentioned that spot you have. I have another little honey hole. I'm not a member of any hunting club. I have my 4 acres. I have a 40-acre spot, a 15-acre spot, a 25-acre spot, but nowhere that's any more acres than that. But again, my spots are prime locations. I have one spot it's only 15 acres, and there's virtually no woods on it except for one stretch that's about 60 yards wide and probably 200 yards long that connects one big section of woods with another big section of woods. And just like you said, I have pictures from 2 seasons ago, 3 seasons ago of a couple of bucks that are 150 plus. But they're every single one, Eric, was nighttime. They're traveling.
Yeah.
One of the bucks ended up being shot half a mile down the road on a 1,200-acre section of woods. And I was lucky and fortunate enough. My son-in-law Brandon, everybody, a lot of these guys know Brandon because of Bo, his blue tick tracking dog. Mm-hmm. And
yeah, okay, I know who you're talking about. He
called me Christmas Eve now, 2 seasons ago. We were eating supper together, myself and my wife and him and my daughter. And he says, I got to go track a deer after we get through eating. You want to go? I said, my wife said, on Christmas Eve? I said, yeah, all our kids are grown. I'm going with Brandon.
Yeah.
And went to track the deer. And we turned down this little road, and I asked him, I said, where are we going? I said, this looks like we're going to go right by my spot. He said, we're going right by your spot. And we got down there, and Bo tracked the deer down, and it was a 146-inch 11-pointer that I had on camera numerous times, but it was always at night. And so when we got to the deer and dragged him out he was in the edge of a beaver pond, dragged him out where we could get a good look. I asked the guy, I said, you want to see pictures of that deer off of another camera? And he just looked at me real funny. And I said, he said, where you hunt? I said, across the street. He said, "Oh, you drive that little white Ram?" I said, "That's me."
Oh, wow.
My point was, I'm sorry, I'm running rabbits now.
No, you're fine.
My point was that particular spot. If I don't get in there in the first 30 days of the season, by the middle of October, end of October, my chances at a decent buck in that one spot are pretty much gone unless I just were to happen to be there one day while they were chasing. But at the end of October, 1st of November, it starts drying up in that spot. The leaves start falling. It's very empty looking, and they stick to the thick edges and nighttime. But in the early part of the season, it's wrapped up. I shot 3 seasons ago. I killed a really nice 8. As a matter of fact, it's one of my bigger bucks. It's an 8. He's an 8 pointer, but he's a 12 pointer. He's an 8 mainframe, and he's got 4 stickers. And he grossed at 132. That is actually the biggest. That's actually the biggest rack or the highest scoring buck I've ever killed. I've never killed a 140, 150. I've killed a lot of big, mature deer.
Yeah.
But I've seen them, but bow hunting is time and place and a little luck,
And also a pain in the ass.
Yeah. That place is the same as yours. It's hot for 30 days, 40 days, 45 days. And when the leaves start falling and things start getting a little naked and everything's gone, they disappear until nighttime. But my early season strategy is if I'm not feeding, I look for muscadines. I have a huge muscadine crop on this piece of property, even on 4 acres. I got a lot of muscadines. I do feed. And if they're coming to that, a lot of people dislike the idea of feeding deer corn or whatever, but if it's legal, I'll do it.
Yep.
And early season is being in the right place at the right time. Try to pattern them because the bucks are on a certain pattern early in the season. And if you got a good spot where you can pattern them, just like the one that I shot last year. He was nocturnal until the end of October. And all of a sudden, he started showing up in the daytime. Well, I planned everything around that one deer. And I ended up shooting him. That's just what I do early season.
So are you because what I try to do everything, right? Like I feed, I do mock scrapes, find trails, find rubs, sit over rubs, look for bedding, look for everything that I can. I mean, in this 1 7-acre property that it's kind of funny how, your setups and my setups are somewhat similar, right? Like I'm on a 7-acre property. It's got 200 to 300 acres of just timber all behind it. And then I've got about 30 acres that I can hunt, but I can't kill a buck over there permission wise. Like they're like, oh, shoot whatever does, but until we kill a buck, we don't want you shooting anything. I'm like, well, kind of defeats the purpose then at that point. I mean, yeah, I'll shoot does, but I'm not going to blow a place out just for a couple does when this big deer is over here. But yeah, man, it's crazy. See, this is why I feel like you're pretty much the perfect person to ask about all this stuff, because
I don't know about that.
Well, in relation to what I deal with, right? Because
well, like you said, a lot of our places are very similar.
Yeah.
I look for trails in the wintertime.
Okay.
When everything's beat down, when everything's gone, the leaves are gone, and the trails are more obvious at that point in time. The creek by my house, the crossings that those deer have used for 50 years, are very obvious. And I have the stand I shot that deer out of. You may have seen some of the videos I posted on Facebook from time to time, looking down at the creek, but the crossings that I'm sitting on has been used for who knows how many years.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of places on that creek where they cross because the banks are so steep. And I say that there's a couple of places where there's a ditch worn out a foot deep where they've been climbing that bank for so many years. Jeez. And so creek crossings, if I'm on a place that's fenced, an old friend of mine, an old friend of my dad's, back in the 70s when I first started, my first deer was in 1979. Okay. He was a piebald. I thought it was a goat when I saw the deer. I'll show you a picture in a minute. I'll let you look at him. I still got him. He's still mounted. But this gentleman told me, he said, David, he said, walk the fence line. Walk the fence line. He said, when you find a bunch of hair on the top strand of barbed wire, put your stand right there and see what happens.
Huh.
And can it's kind of incriminating, but it's been 45 years ago. So we won't, 45 years ago, the limit was 2 deer. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah.
And very limited doe days. And the old man that owned this farm, it was in South Georgia, it's 400 acres, surrounded by 1,400 acres of almost unhunted property.
Oh, man.
And I say almost unhunted, it was by invitation only or slippers. And I still know some of the slippers from back in the day. I know them. But be that as it may, that 400 acres was so prime. But the old man, he said, walk your fences, David. Walk the fences. Look for where they jump the fence, because they're going to be obvious places where they cross that fence. And the old man that owned the place, I came out of the woods one morning, and I have a deer. He said, he's very gruff. He said, boy, you didn't see no deer this morning? And I said, yes, sir. I probably saw 13 or 14. And this was in the 70s.
Yeah.
He said, you didn't shoot one? I said, it's not doe day. And he told me straight up, he said, boy, if you don't start shooting them deer, I'm going to let somebody back at it with. Because he let me hunt and one other person. So my dad, I was still living at home. I was 17. hadn't left home yet. I had 3 sisters, so there were 6 of us. And my dad said, you shoot them, we'll eat them. So my first year, and I hope, like I said, maybe the statute of limitations is passed.
It's way out, so you're good.
I killed 7 that first year. Wow. One nice 9-pointer, big 9-pointer. And then, back then, and everybody kind of starts the same way. If he's got antlers, bam,
Yep.
And back then I was a 30-day bow hunter. And you know what that is? October 23rd comes around, the bow goes in the closet, and the AUX-6 comes out, and then we go serious. And in 2007, coincidentally, when I started with the 3D stuff, a good friend of mine in Dublin, Tim Knight, the taxidermist and the bipolar broadheads guy, he convinced me. He said, give it a try. He said, it's going to be hard. It's going to be hard. Put your gun down. Just stick it out for one season. Well, that's been what now? 16, 17 years? Yeah. 2007 to 24.
17 years.
And I've killed one deer with a firearm in 17 years. And I've taken my share. We'll put it that way. I've taken my share plus over 45 years, but bow hunting is just really where it's at for me,
I know the feeling, man.
And it might have been another friend actually said, if you're hunting with a rifle and you're a fairly decent shot, if a deer shows up, the hunt's pretty much over. You're hunting with a bow and your deer shows up, the hunt's just started.
Yep.
And I like them close. I can shoot a deer. I could make a 50-yard shot. I'm not scared to try that, but none of my setups will allow a 50-yard shot. Everything's 30, 35 and in. And but it's just been a lot of fun for me,
Yeah. I mean, that's why I do it, man. Like I've killed 1 deer with a rifle. I've killed 2 with a crossbow. And the only reason, I know people are going to listen to this, like, oh, he was a crossbow hunter. First off, I got nothing against crossbows, right? Man. But I do now, especially being in archery like I am, feel like, if you're going to shoot a crossbow, either be a kid, have a disability, or be, I guess, old enough to where you can't draw a bow back, right? And that's just my opinion. I'm not going to, like, Dustin Huff's one of my good friends. I don't judge him for killing the country record with a crossbow.
Yeah.
I don't care. That's just my preference. But yeah, man. I mean, after the first year, that right over here, there it is, right there on the wall, with that same bow that's next to my obsession. That was the first year I killed with a bow, and ever since then, I've said I won't hunt without it. I will literally skip whatever hunt I get offered if I can't take my bow.
You're hooked.
Exactly. Well, and so I guess for people who know, who've been listening since the beginning, I've been talking for a couple of years now about going out west and bow hunting muleys. Well, I finally pretty much solidified that for next season.
Nice, very
And
good.
I'm so excited. But what's funny is my uncle who lives out in Colorado, when we first started talking about it, he was like, yeah, man, just come on out, bring your rifle, all this. I was like, no, 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 no. I was like, hold on a second. I was like, I'm not coming for rifle. I'm like, we're going bow hunting. He doesn't bow hunt. I mean, he has, but he's a gun guy. So
Yeah,
he was like, oh, you're trying to bow hunt? I was like, yeah, yeah. He's like, well, you're gonna have to be able to shoot him at 60 to 80 yards. I'm like, hey, as soon as we get this dialed down and we're gonna do it, I'm gonna practice as far as I can, and it's gonna happen.
that's right.
And so yeah, man, I know what you're saying about the addiction to it. It's there's something, and I got nothing against rifle hunting. I really don't.
No,
But
I don't either. I
to
would
me, bow hunting's harder.
if
You know?
somebody offered me, I mean, if I was taken somewhere and the shots might be a couple 300 yards, I wouldn't hesitate to use a rifle in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
I got a safe full of guns. I could, that I'd shoot a rifle again in a minute. It just happens that where I'm at and this point in my life, and as many deers I've taken in 45 years, and all my setups are perfect for bow hunting. And it's just more enjoyable to me.
Yeah.
Now,
I mean, it's more of a challenge, and who doesn't
well,
like a good challenge?
I do like, and this is not southeastern bow hunting, but my one thing that I've become addicted to in the last year or two is peas and coyotes at night with a thermal. Now that is a
Hey,
blast.
someone's got to do it.
Somebody got to do it.
mean,
You mentioned crossbows earlier. 2 seasons ago, I shot one of my biggest, especially, I don't even know what he weighed. We didn't weigh him, but I shot one of my biggest bucks in 45 years with a crossbow. And somebody said, a crossbow? I said, hold on. It was December. And at that time, we actually had Expedition Archery as one of our lines.
oh wow, okay.
And a young man called me and he said, Mr. David, do you have a sample that you can make me a deal on at the end of the year? I said, I've only got one left and I'm hunting with it. And it was actually the bow he wanted. I said, give me till the end of the season and I'll cut you a deal on it. And he said, well, would you be willing to trade it? And I said, what are you talking about trading? And he says, I got a brand new Smith & Wesson AR-15. It's been shot 5 times. I said, I'll be at your house tomorrow.
I was about to say, yes,
I
sir.
said, you can have this bow. I'll finish out the last 4 weeks of the season with a crossbow. I said, I've never killed anything with a crossbow. We'll see what it's all about.
Yeah.
And when you know it, I killed it. He's not a very big rat. I mean, I'm looking right at him. I scored him at 122, but he's a 12-point, massive deer, just massive. And I shot him with that crossbow at 10 yards at such a steep downward angle, and it went through him so fast that he just kind of wiggled and shook himself a little bit and just walked off.
Yeah.
And I thought, what just happened? Well, he bled. I mean, literally just poured out blood for about 150 yards, and then it just quit. And because it was December and it was only 28 degrees that day, I backed out. I called Brandon. I said, when you get off work, bring Bo over here. And we found that deer 600 yards from where I shot him. Without the dog, I never would have found that deer.
Good Lord.
And we backtracked the dog, the trail the dog ran. From the last spot of blood that I found that morning, for the next 400 yards, we found one speck of blood 20 yards from where he fell over.
What broadhead did you hit him with?
Do what?
What broadhead did you hit him with?
Well, it wasn't. It was a wasp Avalon. It was a great broadhead, but the shot was so steep. The picture of the entry hole, me standing there holding the deer with the dog in the truck, the entry hole looks absolutely picture book perfect. But the angle was so steep, it went in and immediately exited the bottom of his chest.
Oh wow!
And I dressed him in the woods because I told Brandon, I said, we're not dragging this big horse 600 yards.
Oh yeah. No.
And I found one nick in his heart, straight down. But he literally bled. I mean, I got pictures of that still too. Just the old story goes, like pouring out of a bucket. He bled heavily for 150 yards, and I think something must have stopped up the hole.
Yeah.
And but yeah, I shot him with a crossbow. I got nothing against that either. My daughter's killed several good deer with a crossbow.
Yeah, I mean, because I remember when Dustin killed that deer, and he, I'll be honest, man. Because I didn't even know Dustin back then. The podcast wasn't even a thing yet, and so I saw that story, and I was like, oh, biggest deer in America, and this and that, and then it said crossbow. I'm like, really? But then, and I kind of got past that, right? I was new to it. I only 2 years into it. I, I had no idea. But then I got to know Dustin and I asked him straight up. I was like, Dustin, why did you use a crossbow? I'm like, you're my age. You're 28, 29 years old. Why? I was like, do you just like using it or what? And he goes, no, I've got this thing with my shoulder where I can't hold a bow back. He's like, sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. And he's like, I'm not going to go out there and hunt when I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to actually be ethical. And I'm like, okay, cool. Hey, dude, that's all I needed to know. You know what I mean? So
Exactly right.
yeah, I mean it's a debate people hear all the time. I'm not trying to get into bows versus crossbows. I don't care. But
No, I don't either. To all the haters out there, just I got nothing for them. If it's
oh
legal
yeah,
and it makes you happy, roll with it.
yep. I've learned to just ignore the hate, ignore the controversy, unless it's something that's like deer news, like the CJ Alexander stuff and all of that. But all right. So you're not using mock scrapes or anything like that, are you?
Last year, I did for the first time. I
Okay.
have a friend. There's products all over the market. I have another friend in Dublin who makes the voodoo stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, he sent me some, and last year I tried that for the first time. I've been very fortunate in my whatever 40 something years. I've always had access to good property. Um, I probably should have killed bigger bucks than I have just by virtue of the property that I had access to. But for so many years, I just wanted to kill something. I mean, I don't mean that to sound bad, you know, but it's only been in the last 10 years or so that I've figured out that I just want to shoot mature bucks. I'll shoot a doe any day of the week. I mean, if it's
Oh
if
yeah.
it's if it's a big doe, young doe, as long as it don't got spots on it, I'm good.
Yep.
I mean, I won't kill a baby, but in the last 10 years or so, I finally made a conscious decision to not shoot 3.5-year-olds unless I just make a mistake, you know.
Yeah.
And so I forgot what you asked me now. I'm chasing rabbits again. I
Mock
forgot.
scrapes. if
Um,
you use them or
I
not.
took I took some of Jeff's stuff from the voodoo, and I, I'm not. I didn't shoot anything over a mock scrape. I had a lot of activity over the
Mm-hmm.
mock scrape. One morning in particular, and it was fresh. I just made it like 2 days before, and I was in the stand. And I had this little 6-pointer come in, and he went directly to the scrape that I made. And he rubbed his little antlers all up in the limb and
Yep.
licked the dirt and pissed in it. I'm sorry, peed in it, and
You can say whatever you want, man. I said
he
ass earlier, so I already did it. I
well,
try
and
not to, but
he just he just worked it over big time. So this year I will start a little earlier
mhm.
because a mock scrape might hold something on my little 4 acres or make it more attractive. Okay, and that brings up that I'm 63 years old. I don't act like it, I don't feel like it, but I'm 63, so I remember stuff occasionally. Right back here on top of the hill behind my house, there's one oak limb that always has a scrape under it. No matter every year I've been here, there's always been a couple of scrapes there. So this year, I freshened that one up, and I made a big circle, like 30 yards, and made 9 more. And it tore them up.
Really?
I put the voodoo everywhere, and I, within a week. Remember, I said earlier that after I shot that buck, I had 9 more show up.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it just
Hmm.
infuriated them. They started rubbing I mean, 3 or 4 inch trees, just shredding trees and stuff. And I'm like, I'm gonna have to try this earlier in the season next year.
Yeah.
I'll try it in, middle of bow season, 1st of September, and get them started, at least get them started.
Yeah.
So my timeline, I'm not actually exactly sure when to start, like all the success, Lee, uh, Lee Johnson from
Yeah.
Captain Kills, his mock scrape routine is obviously he's got that down pat because it works for him every year. So I'll start earlier this time because I firm witness after I freshened up that one and made 9. So I had 10 scrapes in a 30 or 40 yard circle.
That's insane, dude.
And they wore it out. I made them.
Yeah.
I made the scrapes. But after I made the scrapes, they just came back and just destroyed them.
That's what I mean, though. That's it. Like, because I've played with it a lot, you know, because you never know when they're going to change regulations to where you can't feed anymore. And I only feed because the neighbors do. Right. And believe me, if I could go without feeding and still be able to bring them in, like we probably could have years ago,
yep,
I would do it because this feed stuff is getting super expensive, right? But it's funny you say that because the smallest property I've got, which I'm actually it's in danger of going away. I need to go this week and try to get permission at some neighbor spots so I can hold that place. But there is one tree that all right, let me backtrack. This spot is 1 acre and it is a power line. Yeah, it's a power line. I'll say where it's at. It's on Lake Jackson. I can literally see the lake from my tree stand, right? And both sides of the lake. Like it's not a big spot. Well, power lines, I've always been told are really good spots. So I was like, okay, that's perfect. And was after that deer I showed you at TAC, trike, the big 6-point. Started a mock scrape in August, I think early August last year. And from that point up until a month ago, they were hitting it consistently.
Really?
I've got pictures of trike in velvet from a nub out to outside the ears already, hitting that mock scrape. I haven't freshened it up since November or December. And so it's the same thing. You do the right thing, you do it at the right time. And the thing is, that wasn't the only scrape that was there. I made one. There was another one that he and a couple other bucks made maybe 20 yards up towards the road. And then another one they made another 20 yards down towards the driveway of the house that I had permission at.
Right.
And I've never really had much luck. I mean, I hunt public, you know, I hunt our local public areas and I've done mock scrapes. That's the best thing I've learned to use in order to bring them in. And scouting earlier this year, you know, after season was out and finding a bunch of scrapes, like so many. That to me is the best thing to use from what I've seen. But even then, I had one of the biggest deer I've ever had on camera over on public, showing up hitting mock scrapes 3 days after the archery season over there was over. And wow. I'm like, dude, you couldn't. I was there 3 days before this. You couldn't come in that morning?
Yeah,
really? Like nothing changed. So yeah, that's why I was wondering, because that's one thing I don't really cover a lot on the podcast, and I want to start doing is covering people's, you know, mock scrape strategy because it's different for everybody. I mean, one place it works, one place it doesn't.
I saw the results from last season. I will do it earlier this year.
Well, keep me updated because I want to know. I
will.
Awesome, man. Well, look, I guess before we wrap this up, you know, I want to hear the story. So that story you told earlier about the buck from last year, was that your biggest buck?
No. Body wise, that deer and the one I shot a couple of seasons ago with the crossbow, and another buck that I shot. Good grief. I forgot what year, 80? No, it wasn't in the 80s, but in the middle. I've killed 3 or 4, and I have all 3 of them right here that were 200 plus. And one I shot with a shotgun. He had a 22-inch spread.
Oof.
Basically an 8-pointer.
Yeah.
But he's missing a brow tine on one side with an extra, like a G4 over here on this side. So if he'd have had the brow, he'd have been a 9.
Yeah.
And one of my close friends was the wildlife resources director for years until he retired from the state. And he scored that deer for me. And we came up with it's a gross score of 130 as a 6-pointer because of the spread, the spread, the length, the beam length. And he said, we're not even going to score that brow tine because you don't have one to match.
Yeah.
He said, we're not going to score that 2, 3. We're not going to score the G4 because there's not one to match. So we scored him as a 6-pointer, and he grossed 130.
Wow.
And the deer I killed 2 seasons ago is a mainframe 8 with 4 stickers, and he grossed 132. And then again, that one I killed 2 seasons ago, I think it's probably the biggest one I've ever, body wise, was the biggest one I've ever killed. And but you know, I got a bunch of racks in here and fish and a bobcat and that kind of stuff. But
so you know what you're doing.
My little white deer. Hold on a second.
Oh, I see. Oh,
There
that's so cool, dude.
See him?
Yep.
That's him.
That's
I killed
wild.
that deer in 1979, opening day, afternoon hunt. The older gentleman friend that I mentioned earlier that told me to look for the hair on the fence. He was also one of the people that the old man let hunt. Myself, my dad, and this guy. And he said, David, go back to the backfield, go to the far right-hand corner, cross the fence 10 yards. I mean, I'm still on the man's property. It was just cattle fence. He said, cross the fence. He said, 15 yards in the wind, there's a double trunk oak tree. Climb one side of that tree. He said, last year there was a huge 10-pointer working that area. Never could get a shot. So I went to the back corner, climbed up a double oak tree. 45 minutes later, this deer comes walking out. I actually thought it was a goat. I'd never seen. That was my first encounter with a whitetail in the woods.
Yeah.
Pictures, but he walked out, and I looked, and I'm like, that's a goat, because he was more white than he was brown.
Yeah.
I said that, and I thought, that's some awfully long legs to be a goat. And I was shooting an open-sighted 30-30, and I had to shoot him left-handed. When I clicked the hammer back, I didn't keep my finger on the trigger to make it silent, and it clicked, and he turned his head to look toward, because he was 20, 25 yards away. And when he heard that click, he looked in my direction, and he had 2 little spikes about 5 inches long. I said, oh, that's a buck. Pow! Dropped him right there. So when I told the old man where I went, he said, well, you went to the wrong corner. I'm at the upper corner, not the lower corner. I said, I don't think it's the wrong corner at all, because I'll never see one of these deer again. So there you go.
Dude, a piebald. Unbelievable. I mean, that's one deer. Me and my wife had this agreement that all the deer I kill come down here, right?
Right.
But I did tell her, I was like, if I ever shoot an albino, piebald, or melanistic, they're getting full body mounted and they are going in the living room. And she was like, okay, something like that, I'm cool with. And dude, that's insane. You're probably the only person I know, aside from Philip Culpepper, that shot a piebald, honestly. And that just shows how rare it is, because I've heard stories, I've heard stories of like white deer in social circle, on public, some places in Georgia, but I don't know many people that have actually shot one.
Well, that was opening day of 1979, and a few years later, I'm not 100% certain, but I actually felt like I saw one with a group of other deer running across the pasture.
Yeah.
But it was hard to determine. I just am not sure. I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was, but I'm not 100% certain. But those two that's it. For 45 years, I've not seen another one.
Dude, I'd almost feel like, and I know I wouldn't actually feel this way, but I think in the moment, if I ever got to shoot a piebald, I would be like, okay, now what? Because
do I really want to do it?
Well, no, I would do it. I'm saying afterwards, I'd be like, I don't know if a regular deer is just going to cut it anymore.
Oh yes,
it's so cool.
Trust me.
But well, that's what I'm saying. I know I'd think that in the moment, but after like an hour, I'd be like, oh no, I'm going back out, because there's always something better.
Absolutely.
But, awesome, dude. Well, look, man, I appreciate you coming on. I feel like there's still so much more to talk about, so we need to do this again. And as far as, I guess before we wrap it up, do you basically want to just, I don't know, do a shameless plug for all the companies that you work with, kind of push them out there?
You put me on the spot. You put me on the spot. I'm gonna have to look at my drop box, because it's like 20.
Well, we know Victory is one of them.
Absolutely.
We know Extinguisher Calls is one of them.
I have Blackgate cameras.
Oh, really?
Blackgate cameras.
Wow. Okay.
I only have one camera to compare to. I won't mention the brand because I still have 3 of them. We sold those cameras at one point in time 3 years ago. But the Blackgate is very comparable. It's a Tactica. It's very comparable to Tactica. It's comparable to any of them.
Yeah.
The best selling point for Blackgate is the data plan choices. It starts at $3 a month for 250 pictures instead of $5 a month.
Oh wow.
And then you have multiple choices out to like $60 a month, which would be for a plantation or a security system setup. Maybe they built a bundle just as an example. But one camera at $60 a month, 9 cameras at $3 a month. You have 10 cameras, you get 42,500 pictures for $87 a month.
Wow.
And it's not a carrier specific camera. You just put it in the woods, turn it on, it works off the strongest signal. Blackgate cameras, Cobra archery, releases in broadheads.
Oh, okay.
Grizzly coolers, drinkware, shooting houses and the blinds. The Habit clothing line I mentioned earlier. Halo Knock has been very successful this year. For me, it's probably turned into my number 4 or 5 line.
Yeah.
I have 5 states that I cover, and I have sold a truckload of Halo lighted knocks. Illusion, we mentioned extinguisher grunt calls and the black racks. Latitude Outdoors, the saddles. Latitude saddles are mine.
Dang. Okay.
Mountain Mics is a smaller ticket item. Mountain Mics makes and I have one on the wall. Mountain Mics makes a do-it-yourself Euro mount kit.
Oh wow.
It's an injection molded plastic head, and you use your antlers. You saw them off at the Burr. Put it together. It looks great. They got white, aged white, camo, a flag pattern. They make some for elk. They make some turkey mount kits. Really nice stuff. Nose jammer, of course, we talked about. I do sell a lot of nose jammer. Realtree Easy hangers. The screw-in accessory hangers that goes on the tree.
I should have called you. I just ordered some.
Still have. Dang it. And it's really funny. I know we're winding it down, but my connection with Realtree and the Habit clothing line came about because I sell those Realtree Easy hangers.
No, really.
The lady who is my main contact at Realtree has been there since day one. When Bill Jordan hung a sign on the door that said Jordan Outdoor Enterprises, she walked in. She's been there 39 years.
Wow.
And when I met her at the ATA show almost 5 years ago, I sat in the Realtree booth and talked to her for about an hour about the Easy hangers and just Realtree in general. And she made the suggestion, don't you have an inexpensive camo line that I could put on my web store? Yes, ma'am, I do. Well, long story short, now she's probably the largest customer I have strictly because of that clothing line.
Wow.
SKB, I mentioned, hard cases. SKB is expensive, but you get what you pay for. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those instances where you buy once and cry once, because there's a lifetime warranty on it, $1,500 contents warranty, that kind of stuff. Versa Ring is a very interesting line. Versa Ring is a universal scope ring that in the package you get low, medium, and high mounts all in the same package for a price equivalent or less than some of the more popular scope mounts for one single mount. Victory, of course. Mueller Optics. Mueller is a company out of the West. It's not really well known down here, but Mueller is on the same level as Vortex, Hawk, scopes. Price point scope. It's a bargain price scope, but it's an excellent piece of glass with a lifetime warranty, no questions asked, blah, blah, blah. And the last but not least is WASP broadheads. And I sell a lot of WASP broadheads. Nice. I shoot WASP, I shoot bipolar, and I shoot megabeats. Those are my 3 broadheads.
I love how first off, that list is awesome. Because what's funny is a lot of those companies I know work with working class, and I keep hearing them like, oh, Kurt and them work with those guys, Kurt and them work with those guys, Kurt and them work with those guys. Right. They need to get you on, man. I need to drop a line with Kurt and be like, hey, look, I got this dude. All right. Y'all need to get him up there, get him on the podcast, give him a couple of those bush lights or bush heavies, whatever they have, and see what they can get out of you. Right.
Yeah.
But no, man, it's just really funny to me how and I'll say this before I say the other thing. Obviously, I'm shooting VPA. The podcast works with VPA, but that's my fixed head of choice. But if I ever had to go back to mechanicals, Mega Meats would be the choice I would go with. And every single person, except maybe two that I've talked to on here from day one, has always said, "Oh, Mega Meat this or fixed blade that." But it's always the Mega Meat is in like the top 3 levels for them.
Mega Meat's a devastating broadhead. And if you don't mind, I'll give one more shameless plug before we wrap it up.
By all means.
I mentioned Tim Knight earlier in the bipolar broadhead. Tim doesn't get as much exposure as the rest of the guys because he's self-advertised. He doesn't he don't spend a lot of money on advertising. And you've seen his broadhead before.
Oh yeah.
So basically Tim was a very mechanically minded guy. He's a taxidermist by trade, but he got to tinkering and he built the bipolar to have a better broadhead for turkeys. And it just evolved into, he makes 100 grain, a 125 and a 165. Now 165 is an all steel ferrule. That's the one I actually shoot, is the 165 grain head. And this is just my experience. You know, opinions vary. You know what opinions are like. We don't say that, but you know what opinions are like.
Oh yeah.
But in the last ever how many years I've been shooting a bow. I mean, I've hunted with a bow for 40 years, but when I started shooting his broadhead after he came out with the first few models, and this is just my experience. Your experience may vary. That is the nastiest, most deadly broadhead I've ever shot. It seriously is. And people will laugh. You know, his mechanical blades stay in place with a flat toothpick, and some guys think that is cheesy. I use a rubber band to keep them in place.
Yeah,
I've never had one fail to open. I've never had one. I've had blades bend, but
yeah,
you hit a big bone with anybody's blade, it's going to bend.
Yeah, it's either going to chip or it's going to bend. I mean, that's an argument I don't even listen to these days.
No. But that broadhead has been one of the most devastating head I've ever used. One of my customers came out with a broadhead last year, Black Flag Archery. It's a great broadhead. I killed a deer with it this year because he asked me to. I understand.
Yeah,
but it's a good head. I shot a deer with it. It's a great head. And but mechanical wise, and you know, Billy's one of my best. Billy's a good friend, the Mega Meat guy. And but that I'm just a shameless plug for Tim and that broadhead. In 40 years, that's the most devastating broadhead I've ever used. I haven't out of, I don't know, 50, 60, 70 animals in the last 10 or 12 years. I don't think I've had one go past 50 yards. And a lot of them have been within sight.
Yeah.
You know, my daughter killed a really nice 10 2 seasons ago on a Saturday after I killed that 12 pointer on Tuesday. We went back to the same place and she shot a 10 pointer. He was a young deer. I wouldn't shoot him, but I wanted her to shoot him.
Yeah.
Shot him with a bipolar out of crossbow. And I got a video of that. And you can hear him. You hear all this, there's 5 or 6 deer in there. You hear them all crashing off. In about 5 seconds, you hear, blah, 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 blah. He's down, you know, 50 yards.
I'm going to have to look into those more because I know the head that you're talking about, but it's been a minute since I've actually looked at it and watched videos on it and stuff like that.
He basically took a Muzzy and a Schwacker and put it together.
Okay. I think I'm picturing it right, but when we get off of here and I go upstairs and all that stuff, I'll do a little research. Well, I mean, that's one thing, man. Like, you know, and to wrap it up, you know, with the broadhead stuff, it just people shoot whatever you want. But that is one thing I love to do is look into different types of broadheads. Even though I'm very partial to VPA, I still like to tinker with stuff.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So
it's all personal preference. It's just like Ford, Dodge, Chevy.
Yep.
You know, Elite, Matthews, Hoyt, Bowtech. It's all personal preference. You figure out what works for you, and you work with that and make it work. And I shot a bow this year I hunted with a bow this year that was built in 2016.
Oh wow.
Brand new bow I found on a shelf in one of my customers in Alabama. It's a carbon bow. I don't let too many people know that I didn't let too many people know that I hunted with a PSE after the situation that arose with me and PSE, but that's my favorite model hunting bow
Yeah.
ever. It's
Well,
light.
PSC is a good brand. I mean,
It's a great brand.
regardless of the, the internal stuff that happens, it's still a great product.
It's a great bow. And when it was new, in 2016, when I shot that model, everything I pointed it at died. It's light. It fits me. It's fast enough for me to shoot a heavy arrow at 4.6, at 60 pounds, and my little short draw length. And it just does everything I want. And lightweight is a good thing. Lighter weight for me in a hunting bow is what I look for.
Yeah, I mean, you can't argue that. If it works, it works.
And I'm sorry, I chased enough rabbits tonight.
No, you're good. You're good.
Do it again and be a little more pointed in our discussion.
Yeah, dude, I do the same thing. You're fine. You are perfectly fine.
Well, I enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Eric, thank you for asking me.
Yeah, of course, dude. We're gonna have to do this again soon, whether it's this summer or during deer season. Honestly, I kind of want to do it during deer season to keep up with what you're after.
Okay.
Obviously we're not going to let any cats out of the bag on your spots and certain deer, because I'm sure you and I don't live that far away. You're like maybe 20-25 minutes from my house, so I'm sure that we know people that are hunting the same deer as you, and probably as me, especially if we hunt public. But yeah, man, I mean, we're gonna make it happen again, and I seriously appreciate you coming on this. This was a nice, refreshing episode. It really was.
I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I appreciate you having me on.
Yes, sir. Anytime.
All right.